Hey guys, I'm so excited to show you this video. I was so obsessed and stunned when I finished this color. I had no idea that it was going to turn out so perfect. I'm going to show you the application and formulation that I used to create this beautiful hair color. If you want, you can follow me over on Instagram at Christy@thecottage. Here's my client. This is the first time that I'm doing her hair. You can see she has a lot of grow out and super brassy. Okay, so I'm doing my client for the first time, and she kind of has like kind of like a grown out ombre look that she's wanting, where it's pretty blonde through the ends and kind of like a medium brown blonde like up in this area. However, she does want me to go through and do some foils like right around the hairline. That way we can brighten her up quite a bit. So we're going to be doing a full foliage and taking her natural, probably level 3, to faded to like a brighter blonde through the ends. So I'm gonna mix for that. We're gonna be using my Schwarzkopf Blonde Me Lightener with 20 volume and Olaplex. We're gonna start by doing our foil around the hairline to make her hair nice and bright and give her that really nice money piece that everybody loves. I'm just going to be doing 3 fine weaves with a little bit of a subsection in between. That way she's going to have a lot of blend as her hair grows out, and it's not going to be too harsh of a line right on her hairline. And when she pulls her hair back, it's just going to look as if the sun naturally had sun-kissed it. When you do your foils around their hairline, make sure you ask your clients how obvious and how bright of a money piece do they want. I do extremely fine baby lights, just a very, very fine, soft weave. I don't ever want them to be able to see like streaks or stripes, or I don't want them to be able to see the actual weave in their hair when they pull their hair back. I just want them to be able to notice that the hair is slightly lighter and just kind of more of a glisten when the light hits it, so that way it just grows out really soft and they hardly notice it at all. If somebody wants a more bold money piece, then I would definitely do like a really heavy weave and not really do that much subsection in between, or maybe even thicker sections when I do my weave. But make sure you ask your client if they want it to be very soft, then make sure you do really fine sections. Now that we're up at the top of our forehead, we're just going to continue foiling about the same that we're doing around the temples. Just a really soft weave, just enough to brighten her up a little bit around her face, but not anything that's gonna look too chunky or stripy. Now that her facial foiling is done, we're going to go around and start her balayage. And to do that, I'm going to go exactly where her part is and kind of zigzag down her part area. That way I can make sure that wherever she flips her hair, even if it's just a little bit over more on one side to the other from where her part sits, that she'll have equal brightness on either side. So we're going to start that and start our balayage at the top near her face and just do like 1 or 2 panels on the first side and then flip over to the next. I don't know where you guys like to start when you do your balayage, but I find that when I start right at the top where the part is, especially if they have darker hair, that I don't have to worry as much if it's gonna lighten enough because it's gonna sit here the longest and get pretty bright. So for me, when I do my balayage, I've started at the top and work my way down. Now that we're on to the other side, I usually like to reference the other side and check my sectioning just to make sure that I'm following the exact same pattern or panel size as the opposite side. That way we maintain balance on either side of the head. As we make our way through the back, you can tell in the last foil that we stayed a little bit higher up towards the root area. So in this next one, I'm going to drop it down to like the mid shaft through the ends. I want to make sure that even though we're trying to break her roots up, she still does want to stay pretty rooty and natural looking with a little bit of dimension. So making sure that you're staggering your balayage pieces from high to low between sections, I think is a good way to make sure that you're keeping enough depth and dimension through the hair. So I'm just going to finish my section in the back before I move on to the sides, just because this does have quite a bit more grow out and a little bit more lifting that it needs to do in the side areas. So I want to finish this area and let this start processing, and then I will make my way to the sides. Now that we're on the side again, you can see that I'm not really doing a very large subsection in between the previous section that we had just done before when we first started. So I'm not going to take this section up as high as the last one, but I do want to make sure that it has a good blend. So I weaved this section out, and then I'm going to make sure I paint very heavily through the ends. So when the top section falls on this, when we're all done, she's gonna have a nice layered effect of having some brightness, but then also some depth. But through the midsection, through the ends, it's gonna be pretty solid blonde as the hair falls down. You can see here when I'm weaving that this is all that I'm going to be doing for my subsection. So we are doing a pretty heavy foliage, and then I'm going to go through and start my lightening section after that. So keep in mind that you want to always have a little bit of a subsection in between. That way you maintain the natural hair color a little bit better and keep that depth and dimension that the client wants. After I do a few sections on the other side, I'm gonna go ahead and switch over to this side. That way we get even lifting. I don't wanna just do one whole half of the head and then go over to the other side. I feel like that would be a big mistake, especially with dark hair. One side's gonna process so fast and then the other side is just not gonna be bright enough. So I like to go back and forth in between the sides. So now we're going to go over here, do a few sections, and then flip back to the other side. Now that we're back over on this side, we're going to finish working our way down to the nape of the neck and then finish that on the other side, and then we'll be done for our application. You can see here that we foiled basically all bits of her hair, just at different levels. Some were higher and some were lower, but basically everything is getting lightened.
Okay, so I'm getting ready to tone my client. We got her really nice and bright around her face, and her ends are still a little bit warm, but they're brighter. So she wants to be bright, but kind of like on the cooler, ashier side. So I'm going to tone her probably with 10 PA, 9V, maybe some 9 PA if I have it. And then we're gonna go through and tone her shadow root after that.
And for the toner, I'm using all of these equal parts.
Okay, so we just toned my client for her brightest blonde, and it turned to a really nice, pale, super cool blonde tone. That 10 PA really makes that a really pretty color. I highly recommend it if you guys haven't used it. So now we're going to go through and do her roots. And the picture that she showed, it was probably like a level 7, pretty warm, but I'm glad that I asked her because this damn thing. I asked her, the picture has the roots pretty warm. Do you want it like that? Because she had said that she wanted it just like the picture. And I'm glad that I asked because she said she wants it like the picture except for ashy. So I really had to like rethink my service because I wasn't gonna have to have her lift for too long because she was gonna have a warm undertone and I could just neutralize it. But because she wants to be an ashier shade of a root color, I have to like lift to like a level 9 and then tone back down to like a level 7. Because if I just use an ash color to neutralize the warmth, it's just gonna be like a warm brown color. So to get a true ashy tone, I have to actually lift like 2 shades lighter than what we want to tone back down to get an actual like true ashy tone. The only thing, so I did a color the other day and I don't think I've posted it yet. If I've posted it, it will be titled like mushroom blonde, I think. So if you watch that video when I toned her, I was like praying to the Lord because I was afraid her hair was gonna turn blue. She had some really bright like blonde pieces and I was afraid they were gonna grab, and thank the Lord they ended up turning out really well. So for my client today, I'm gonna use the 612 and 71, which was basically the same formulation that I used on the client that I'm talking about. but I'm going to add some gold to it this time just because it gives it a little bit more depth. I feel like it kind of helps just neutral or balance the tones really good, so that way it doesn't look muddy, which was kind of like almost what happened with my last client. So right now we're gonna mix for that, and honestly, I'm just gonna do like a teeny little drop of the gold.
Here's the gold, you guys, and honestly, it's not even measurable how much I'm putting in.
Another thing, so I already toned her hair for the brightest blonde, and the reason is because you'll see that she has some really pretty bright white blonde pieces, but then you'll see where there's some yellow pieces kind of going through a little bit still. So that's why I wanted to tone first, so that way I can go back through where those warmer spots are and kind of like pull those out and tone those down with the shadow root.
Now we're gonna go through with her root color, but honestly this really isn't a shadow root, it's more like a color melt just because it drags down so far. So there's so many different terms and phrases that you can call it, but call it whatever you will. This isn't just going to be on her roots. We're going to drop it down pretty far into the mid shaft also. Somebody had recently asked me how I feel about the Schwarzkopf toners, and I really have to say, I know I've mentioned it before, that I really like how these tone. I highly recommend using this, especially for darker hair clients, because when I use my Paul Mitchell, and however much I love my Paul Mitchell for my brighter blondes, I feel like when I use it for a root shadow, it still leaves a lot of warmth behind. Even if I use like all PA and all V, it still is a little bit too natural and warm for me. So I've started switching over to the Schwarzkopf, especially for darker hair clients, or maybe for a stronger root shadow or more of an ashier tone. So I highly recommend, if you are having a hard time getting a nice cool root shadow color, then definitely use Schwarzkopf. Use any of like the 7-1, 8-1-1, 6-1-2. Those are like my go-to favorites, and then you can always just add like a little bit of 7 or 8-0, or even like 5-0, just for a little bit extra depth. But beware though, if you use this, it definitely processes really solid, where the Paul Mitchell, when it processes, it's pretty translucent and you can see through to the highlights, where with Schwarzkopf, I definitely feel like when you let it sit and process, it almost completely covers up the highlights. So just know that going into it, if somebody wants to see just a really soft shadow, maybe just don't let it sit as long, or just find something else. Like the Paul Mitchell would be a good option. It just might not cool down as much. But if somebody wants to have their roots really covered up very nicely and softly lighten over time, then Schwarzkopf would be a good choice. in this area right along her hairline and right up at the top where the money piece area is. I'm really not dragging it through the ends at all. I'm really just tapping right at the root area just to blend it and soften it a little bit just right there. And then probably the last few minutes after everything's processed, I'll probably drag it through the ends just to reinforce that ashiness and coolness. But oh my god, look at how good that looks. When I can see the ashy tone like that, I know that it's gonna turn out really nice. Here's her before again, super brassy, tons of warmth in her hair. And here is her after. Look at this color. I'm so freaking obsessed with this. I think it looks so pretty and so gorgeous. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you think this turned out just as amazing as I think it did. Anyways, if you guys try this formulation, let me know. I want to see how you guys like it. Thank you guys so much for watching again, and don't forget to like and subscribe.